That word, recession, right? It's enough to make you a little nervous. But what if the way we think about it, this big dramatic collapse, is all wrong? That's what we're going to dig into today. We're going to break down what a recession really is, how they actually start, and maybe most importantly, who gets hit the hardest. All right, let's jump in. So, you know that picture in your head of an economic collapse, like a huge sudden stock market crash on the news. What if I told you that's almost never how it actually starts? Yeah, it doesn't start with some big bang. It's not like you can point to a calendar and say, that's the day it all went wrong. Nope. The way it really begins is, well, it's a lot quieter than that. It starts with these tiny little decisions that feel almost invisible at the time. A family decides, let's push that vacation back a year. A local shop thinks, maybe we'll wait to hire that new person. Each one seems like nothing on its own. But when you multiply that by millions of people, well, that's when you get the first tremors, long before anyone officially calls it an economic earthquake. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we've got to cut through all the jargon. Let's start with the basics. What even is a recession? All right, so here's the official technical definition you'll find in a textbook. But let's be real. Does a significant decline in economic activity really mean anything to you? It's so vague, it doesn't capture what it actually feels like. Okay, here's a much better way to think about it. It's just when money stops moving. That's it. If you think of money as the blood pumping through the economy, a recession is when that flow just slows way, way down. It becomes a trickle. So a healthy economy, it's got this strong, steady heartbeat, right? Money is moving from person to business, business to person all the time. But in a recession, that heartbeat gets weak. It's faint, irregular. Everything just feels stuck. Okay, so if a recession is like a weak heartbeat, what causes the heart attack in the first place? Because these things don't just pop up out of nowhere. They're always triggered by something. And here's the thing. It's almost never just one single cause. It's usually a mix of a few of these things hitting at the same time. It's like this perfect storm, this toxic cocktail that creates the right conditions for a downturn. But if you had to pick the biggest, most common trigger, it's almost always that first one. People just stop spending. I mean, think about it. Our spending is the fuel that makes the whole economic engine go. And the second people get nervous about the future, what's the first thing they do? They hold on to their money. And that, right there, is where the downward spiral can start. And it starts small. It starts with you thinking, you know what? I can wait on that new phone. Or me thinking, I should probably cancel that streaming service. They feel like tiny personal decisions, but when millions of us do it, the ripple effect is huge. Because obviously, when we stop spending, businesses stop earning. And that's everyone from your corner coffee shop all the way up to a giant corporation. The cash just stops flowing in. So what happens when a business has less money coming in? Well, they have to cut back. That means they stop hiring, maybe they cut people's hours, and then comes the one thing nobody wants to see, layoffs. And this is the absolutely crucial part. This creates a vicious cycle, a feedback loop. You see layoffs on the news, which makes you scared for your job, so you spend even less. And that just makes everything worse. A recession isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about psychology. It's about fear. And that fear can literally become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But this fear isn't just some abstract idea. It has real, sometimes devastating consequences in the real world. And the thing is, the burden isn't shared equally at all. So let's talk about who really feels the pain. Time and time again, the data shows that it's low-income workers who get hit the hardest and the fastest. People working in hospitality, in manufacturing, in retail, they're often the first ones to lose their jobs. Yeah, there's a line from one of the pieces we looked at that just puts it so perfectly. Recessions feel unfair because they are. It's just a fact. The pain is never spread out evenly. The people with the least protection are the ones who suffer the most. And it's not just about job losses either. Small businesses that are the heart of our communities, they get absolutely crushed. Young people just graduating from school, they walk into a terrible job market. And if you have any debt, like student loans or a mortgage, it suddenly feels a whole lot heavier. Meanwhile, the big corporations, well, they usually have enough cash saved up to just ride it out. Okay, but here's the good news, and it's really important to remember this. Recessions always end. They They are a cycle. So the question is, how does that weak heartbeat get strong again? What does recovery look like? The first thing, and maybe the most important thing, is just to know that they're temporary. Now, that doesn't make them any less painful while they're happening, for sure. But history is crystal clear on this point. The economy always recovers. The downturn eventually hits a bottom and starts to turn around.
So, how does that turnaround start? Well, it usually gets a little push. Governments and central banks step in. They do things like lower interest rates, which makes it cheaper to borrow money, cheaper car loans, cheaper mortgages. The idea is to get people and businesses spending again. And as things start to stabilize, that key ingredient, confidence, slowly starts to come back. And once that happens, businesses feel better about hiring people again. And that lifeblood, that money, starts moving.
Now, here's a really interesting and kind of controversial way to think about all this. Some economists actually compare recessions to forest fires. And I know that sounds terrible, but hear me out. The idea is that while they are super destructive, they can also clear out all the dead wood, all the bad investments and unsustainable debt. And that makes room for new, healthier growth to come back later. And that really brings us to the big takeaway here. If these things are a natural, though painful, part of the system, maybe the real question isn't, how do we stop recessions from ever happening again? Maybe the better question is, how do we get better prepared for when they inevitably do arrive? Because what we've seen is that a recession is a quiet process that gets supercharged by one thing: fear. Now, understanding how it all works doesn't make you totally immune, of course, but it can make you less afraid. And when it comes to economics, fear is often the most expensive mistake you can make.